Welcome back, students. This is Module 2.4.3, photosynthesis. I'm just going to call this photosynthesis as it deals with the major processes. First, before we get into photosynthesis proper, we're going to talk about where photosynthesis occurs. In eukaryotic organisms, photosynthesis occurs in special organelles called chloroplasts. Plastids are a class of organelles inside plant cells that contain pigments, and chloro means green. So these are the organelles that contain green pigment. Most chloroplasts are located in the leaves of plants, and some plants have chloroplasts in the stems. You have previously seen chloroplasts in the cell lab when we looked at the aquatic plant Elodea. And down in the lower right of this screen, you can see a photomicrograph of Elodea cells, nice and rectangular with the little green discs, which are chloroplasts. And what makes the chloroplast green, of course, is the green pigment chlorophyll, which we'll learn about a little bit later in this topic. Maybe not this module, though. In any case, here's another view. This is showing a photograph of a plant other than not Elodea, and it's showing a drawing, an interpretive drawing with the central vacuole and the green discs, which are chloroplasts. And you can see the other organelles, including the nucleus, which we, by the way, didn't see in Elodea because we didn't really stain for the DNA, and we didn't, as a consequence, see it very well. The structure of these little organelles called chloroplasts is rather interesting. They have double membranes. Remember, it is hypothesized that chloroplasts originated by endosymbiosis. We discussed this in the cell module. And so having a double membrane and then an internal membrane system beyond that, and a fluid inside that's called stroma. So rather than look at this with words, let me just show a picture, and we'll come back and look at these captions here later, these narratives. So I think you should draw this. So find a little space in the margin of your notes and draw two membranes, and that's what they are. There are two membranes on the outside, and then inside there's all these green, they look like green stacks of green coins, and that's what early microscopists saw. And these actually have membranes on them, and they're called thylakoids. That's the individual green coins. A whole stack is called a granum, which in Latin means a stack of coins. But the point is, I suppose, that there's a interconnected membrane system in the center, and of course around that there's a fluid. It's kind of this pinkish color here, and that the fluid is called stroma. And so we really are seeing the membrane system and then the stroma as two separate locations inside the chloroplast. So I try to point out the locations that we're going to refer back to later. So it has a double membrane, internal thylakoid membrane system, and a fluid-filled center called stroma. It is inside the thylakoid membranes where the green pigment chlorophyll is found, and the function of chlorophyll is to harvest pigments. There's also differently colored pigments found in the thylakoid membranes, and these include things such as carotene and xanthophyll, belonging to a category called carotenoids. Carotenoids and carotene are orange, red, yellow. Carotene is more orange-red, and xanthophyll more yellow. And so we're going to leave the structure of the chloroplast now. Hopefully you're fairly familiar with that. And we're going to talk about the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is divided into two sets of reactions, and we call these two stages, two steps. Light reactions, and the summary of light reactions quite accurately here is stated as light energy to chemical energy. So we're transforming sunlight into chemical bonds in various molecules. And the light reactions occur first and are followed by the dark reactions. And the dark reactions uses the chemical energy from the light reactions to make sugar, to make glucose, and perhaps a polymer of glucose, starch. So let's first consider the light reactions. The light reactions compose the first stage of photosynthesis. The light reactions occur in the thylakoid membranes of the chloroplast. I think it's important that you understand where each of these components of photosynthesis occur. The thylakoid membranes have pigments arranged in a very specific pattern, and we know much more about it than we're going to learn in Bio 101. But just know that there are these pigment molecules, including chlorophyll, carotene, xanthophyll, but primarily chlorophyll in the thylakoid membranes. And in the process, the end result of light reactions is, as stated on the previous slide, that light energy is converted to chemical energy. And that's kind of the essence of it. But let's see if we can describe in just a little more detail what happens. Now, when a particle of light strikes a pigment molecule in a thylakoid membrane, it excites some of the electrons inside that pigment. And when we say excite, we mean it elevates the energy level. And this happens in just a millisecond. It's quick. And before that electron goes back down to its previous energy level, it can pass that energy on in kind of a chain reaction. And it turns out that the pigments are arranged kind of like antennae, and there's a pigment in the center, a pigment molecule of chlorophyll, that takes the energy from all of the others, and this allows the process to continue. And this process, this one central chlorophyll, feeds the energy into a series of proteins that are very much like the proteins in the electron transport chain that we saw in cellular respiration. And a similar kind of thing happens. These electrons move down, and we get chemiosmosis. And so that means that we actually have the formation of ATP. And so this is what we're talking about. Chemiosmosis occurs in the light reactions of photosynthesis. And of course, the products of this process include chemical energy stored in the form of ATP and also energy carrier molecules, whose names we will not learn. And that's a basic summary of light reactions. They are followed by the dark reactions. This is the second stage of photosynthesis. The dark reactions must occur after the light reactions because the input for the dark reactions includes ATP and those charged energy carriers. And if you don't have light reactions, you don't have ATP and you don't have charged energy carriers. So dark reactions must occur after the light reactions. The place where the dark reactions occur, also in the chloroplasts, those organelles, but they occur in the stroma, out in the fluid medium between the thylakoid membranes. That's where the enzymes for the dark reactions are, and that's where the products of the light reactions end up. And so what happens in the dark reactions, as stated, the chemical energy of ATP and energy carriers is released and used to manufacture organic compounds, especially glucose, that all-important monomer, which can be used then to make starch or the structural molecule of cellulose. So it can have many different functions. Glucose can be used directly as the input for cellular respiration and glycolysis. And so the fate of glucose varies depending upon the needs of the cell. There are some competing side reactions that occur inside the process of photosynthesis. They are, as a part of photosynthesis, they compete with photosynthesis is the way to say it, not really part of photosynthesis, so make sure you understand that. These reactions are called photorespiration. The name is not a good one. It has nothing to do with respiration, so it is a process unrelated to respiration in which a competing reaction decreases the efficiency of the dark reactions of photosynthesis. So it doesn't do anything beneficial. That is, photorespiration doesn't do anything beneficial. It only decreases the efficiency of producing sugars. And in the process of photorespiration, oxygen competes with carbon dioxide for an important enzyme. When oxygen wins, that's when photorespiration occurs, and carbon dioxide is released without producing glucose. Remember, what we're doing in the dark reactions is we're linking carbons together, bonding carbons together. This process is sometimes called carbon fixation. Not that the carbon's broken, but when we link carbon to carbon, this is called carbon fixation. And that's what is beneficial to the plant, and that's what occurs in the dark reactions of photosynthesis, and that's what photorespiration competes with and decreases the efficiency of. We'll return to this because this process of photorespiration has significant implications for plant fitness and therefore for plant evolution. Before we leave the topic of photosynthesis itself, I want to just look at kind of a global picture. It's approximately 1% of the sun's light is captured by photosynthesis, and globally it makes something around 105 gigatons, 105 billion metric tons. I honestly don't have a good idea of what this number is, but this is the estimate that scientists have come up with for the annual production of photosynthesis on the planet. And this is kind of what supports all other life, including human life. And so this is what's at the base of the food chain. The producers, at least the photo producers, are producing this much carbohydrate per year, and supports most of the life on the planet. What isn't supported by this? Well, that which is supported by chemosynthesis down at those hydrothermal vents. And there's a few other places we see bacteria that do chemosynthesis. That was hard to say. Chemosynthesis, such as in some mudflats and things. Of all of the photosynthesis that occurs, of all the carbohydrate that is produced, almost 54% was by terrestrial production, while about 46% was produced in the oceans. Here is a figure which kind of shows you where some of the more productive areas are. On land, the darker green areas have more photosynthesis, and in the oceans, it's not the darker blue. The darker blue is less productive, and so it gives you this kind of look. In any case, there is something called human appropriation of net primary production. Humans take almost a fourth, almost 24%, almost not quite 25%, which would be a fourth of all of the net primary production. That is a very large proportion. And that's not humans directly. That includes our grazing animals and such, of course, too. In the year 2000, and that's, of course, over a decade ago, over a third of the Earth's ice-free land area was devoted to human agriculture. Boy, that's a lot. And what scientists really don't know is how large these fractions can become before we have serious degradation of ecosystem services that will impact people and degrade the environment for humans. Right now, humans are just taking more and more, and they're not mindful that there will come a tipping point where such losses to natural ecosystems will destroy some of the services which humans count upon. And so there's a serious part to this photosynthesis, and it's important for us to understand it as well. And that will conclude this module.